What are some psychological life hacks you can do to give you an advantage in situations? I remember the last time this thread showed up. Someone posted that if you ask someone to do you a small favor, cognitive dissonance will make them believe that because they did that favor, they therefore must like you. After all, why would they help someone they disliked? I don't have a source unfortunately, but I believe the original comment did if anyone can find the previous thread. I think Ben Franklin said this originally and it's right on the money. Ben Franklin is right on the money, but only the hundreds at it. My very first gold. I feel special. Close bracket. If you're in a group meeting and you suspect that someone in there might come after you about something, sit right next to them. They were hoping that the group would provide some sort of her defense. But if you're right next to them, it can't be anything other than personal. This tends to make them back off, or at least substantially temper what they say. Source. Had a job with a huge target painted on my back for years. In sales. Though I guess it could be applied in other ways, once you make the sales pitch, don't say anything else. My boss at an old job was training me and just giving me pointers. I was working at a gym trying to sell memberships. He told me that once I got all the small talk out of the way and presented the prices, that the first person to talk will lose. It didn't seem like a big deal, but it actually worked. Often there were long periods of awkward silence as the person tried to come up with some excuse. But usually they bought. It was quite impressive actually. False attribution of arousal. When you take somebody out on a first date, take them somewhere exciting that will get their heart beating. E.g. roller coaster or horror film. This gets their adrenaline up. It makes them think they enjoy spending time with you rather than the activity. If they enjoy those activities, otherwise, it makes them think that you cause nausea or nightmares. So weaving in out of traffic at ludicrous speeds with a gun to their head won't work. Open bracket. For interviews, I recommend altering your psychological state beforehand. Tell yourself, I've known these people all my life. We're old friends catching up. I can't wait to see them. Visualize the experience. Shaking hands. Making eye contact. Having conversation. What things can you not to wait to tell them? Hold an open pose. Stand with your legs apart. Hands on your hips. And shoulders back while doing this and smile. This may sound cliche, but you are in charge of your own psychological state and the power of suggestion is strong. Pay attention to people's feet. If you approach two people in the middle of a conversation, and they only turn their torsos and not their feet, they don't want you to join in the conversation. Similarly, if you are in a conversation with a coworker who you think is paying attention to you and their torso is turned towards you but their feet are facing in another direction, they want the conversation to end. You should check out Carol Kinsey Goman's research on these types of things in the workplace. Chew gum when you're approaching a situation that would make you nervous, like public speaking or bungee jumping. I can't remember where I heard it, but apparently if we are eating something and our brains trip and it reasons I would not be eating if I were danger. So I'm not in danger. Has helped calm me a few times. I learned this on here a few years ago. For anyone in customer service, or works for many different situations. But CS is a big one. Put a mirror behind you at the counter. This way angry customers who approach you will have to see themselves in the mirror behind you and the chances of them behaving irrationally lower significantly. No one wants to see themselves act like a dickhead. This is one of the reasons why many bars install large mirrors behind them. The main reason is so the bartender can see who is where and if any new customers approach at all times. But there are other reasons as well. If you're ever tending bar and a customer approaches you directly and starts getting upset or angry, just take a deep breath and step slightly to either side and lean on the bar using either your right or left elbow only. If you move your head out of the way just fast enough to break eye contact, they will be briefly forced to stare at themselves. Even if you don't move fast enough, peripheral vision always seems to notice that familiar face. Also, leaning in puts you in a position of power for quite a few reasons. Only the proudest of assholes are immune. If you get yourself to be really happy and excited to see other people, they will react the same to you. It doesn't always happen the first time, but it will definitely happen next time. When a group of people laugh, people will instinctively look at the person they feel closest to in that group. Read. Wanna know who wants to bone who? Look at who they look at when everyone laughs. If someone else knew this trick and looked at you to see who you were looking at and vice versa, you would both think you liked each other. Well, if that happens, those two should just get it on. Might as well. They already looked at each other. No going back at that point. You know how a joke ceases to be funny when you have to repeat it? Well, use that to your benefit. If that asshole in the group is making jokes at your expense, act like you can't hear him and ask him to repeat it like 3 times. By the time he says it a 3rd or 4th time, no one's laughing. I always try to figure out everyone's motivations for what they are doing. Are they trying to take advantage or are they genuinely trying to help someone? In business situations, who stands to profit? Always follow the motivations and always know who profits. By knowing this, you can protect yourself from being taken advantage of. If you find someone being altruistic, you know who to befriend. A Navy lifer I worked with taught me the see one, do one, teach one method. The last step is the most vital step for your comprehension. If you are taught a new task at work, most people learn to do the task and then perform the task. If you find another employee to teach what you just learned, you will comprehend the concept better and retain the info for much longer. Whenever I train a new associate at work, I ask them to go show another co-worker how to do the task they just learned. Magic. If you really want something from someone, frame it as an offer rather than a request. When Teddy Roosevelt was running for president, his campaign printed out 3 million leaflets with a picture of Teddy and a copy of a campaign speech. The campaign then realized that they didn't have the rights to the photo. Instead of explaining the situation to the photographer, which would have given him leverage to ask for a lot of money, the campaign made an offer that they would use the picture, giving the photographer lots of publicity if the studio paid them $250. The studio paid the money. If you're into psychological hacks, then you must read Get Anyone to Do Anything, also on iTunes audiobooks. It's a fascinating, easy to understand book written by a psychologist. The hacks are divided up into chapters. How to catch someone out on a lie, for example. Brilliant technique. I gave this to an old manager I used to work with. He was having problems with a board member that hated him and wouldn't agree with any of his suggestions regardless of how good they were. After applying techniques in the book, that all changed. I also used it to get a date with a woman who I considered way out of my league. It worked, I'm ashamed to say. This has been posted before. But if you want to stare at someone unashamedly, look directly past them and wait for them to try and meet your eyes. When they fail to do that, they'll look around, usually nervously for a second, and won't look at you again for some time. This is your chance to straight up stare at this person for at least 45 seconds. I work with mentally disabled children and have found it highly beneficial to describe their capacities in such a way that I indirectly describe their limitations, as opposed to the reverse. In real life terms, avoid negative words when pitching something unfavorable to an audience that you want to receive it well. If you can do it in writing, all the better, because you get to pick out your words carefully. Also focus the manner by which you intend to fix things, rather than the problems. Johnny can't even speak in phrases, and only turns his head to you when you say his name, but doesn't make eye contact. He won't sit in a chair for more than a minute unless you repeatedly tell him to. Nope. Try again. Johnny uses words to communicate. So the next step is to strengthen his skills up to the level of 2-word phrases. He responds to his name by turning. So we're going to work on his ability to maintain eye contact. Johnny is able to remain seated for longer than 1 minute if given repeated prompting. Which would you rather hear about your kid? This also applies to other types of work. Use it to present anything negative. Works magnificently. Make it a practice to get rid of filler words and phrases such as up, like, you know, etc. Instead use short pauses to gather your thoughts before speaking, though avoid Shatner-style pauses. Using filler words keys whoever you're talking to that you are thinking about what you're saying. Leaving them out makes these thinking spots less noticeable, since you aren't essentially announcing to the world that you are thinking, and makes you seem more sure of yourself. Stand up straight. No slouching. Hands out of pockets. And head held up high. It's not just a cliche, you literally feel better and people around you feel more confident in you. Not always a must. But try to dress well for important occasions, including interviews. If you look good, you feel good. And if you feel good, you'll do good. In a negotiation setting, always start by anchoring. Meaning start on a more radical extreme end of what you expect to get. That way, you and the other side can work to that result, rather than you locking yourself out of it. Avoid saying I think and I believe unless absolutely necessary. These are phrases that do not evoke confidence and will literally do you no good. When playing a game of cards with casual players, mutter to yourself the exact opposite of what you want to happen. So if you want your opponents to fold, then mutter, please don't fold. Please don't fold. An overwhelming amount of times, the opponent will fall for the bait. When feeling anxious, clean up your house apartment. You will feel happier and more accomplished than before. From an academic standpoint, this is mostly just armchair psychology. But from a real-world standpoint, these have all worked very well in my personal and professional lives. You don't have to. You get to. Edit. Regarding cancer. I have to have chemo. Double quote. I get to have chemo. Double quote. Which one would you rather say? Have to is a great way to remove agency and make yourself a victim of your own life. I'm not saying that cancer is great or fun, or that this trick will magically make your suffering go away. But it will reframe it so that you are an agent in your own life and adds a dollop of gratitude. Got cancer? You can be a monstrous cancer patient or an inspiration. You can give the FCK up or you can go down fighting. I've watched both, and the quality of one is far better than the other. The best one I ever heard was, apparently, if you have a warm hand when you shake somebody's hand, you immediately become a more desirable person to get along with. Lesson. Warm your hand in your pants before shaking hands with someone. Who doesn't love sweaty ball hands though? If you feel uncomfortable in a social situation, try making someone else feel comfortable. Forget about yourself and focus on them. You'll both be glad that you did. Most of the things I use have been said already, but there is something that I can't really describe that I use. Do you remember that feeling you used to get as a kid when you were really genuinely excited about something and you just had a compulsion to jump around and tense your stomach and kinda make a high-pitched ee sound while your face was locked in a broad smile? It's an intense feeling that swells in your stomach. If ever you're really intensely nervous or anxious and feeling sick about something you're about to do, like public speaking or even about to talk to a girl you like, turn your fear into that feeling. Tense your stomach or legs. Feel your head swell and have that urge to jump around and scream with joy, but don't actually do it. Keep a calm, pleasant head while this feeling is bubbling under the surface. People can sense this inner enthusiasm and will find it captivating and infectious. There are decisions in life you should make beforehand. Because if you find yourself doubting important stuff in the heat of the moment, your decision will be difficult and more likely to be wrong. For instance, having unprotected sex. If you think about it for the first time when you are about to have it, it's easier to let the situation slip and make a poor decision. For taking tests, always have a water bottle with you. And chew mint flavored gum or have mints on you. An hour of sleep before midnight is the equivalent of 2 hours after midnight with serotonin levels. So try to sleep early and wake early and you'll feel more rested. You are more likely to retain knowledge by spacing out study sessions and getting 8 hours of sleep the night before than cramming and getting less sleep. The things you learn from having a biopsychology degree. The Benjamin Franklin effect. My favorite psychological phenomenon is cognitive dissonance. It's when you hold two opposing beliefs or values and it causes what's known as psychological discomfort. When this happens, you'll act or think in a way to ease the discomfort. Usually by trying to blend the beliefs' values by changing the way that you think act in terms of one of them. The Benjamin Franklin effect is what happens when you arouse cognitive dissonance in someone that doesn't like you by asking them to do you a small favor. If they do the favor, which they probably will if it's small enough of a request, then you invoke cognitive dissonance as they hold two beliefs. That they don't like you, but that they are willing to help you out. This results in them trying to resolve this psychological discomfort by creating the belief that they actually like you. So, you can turn your enemies into your friends simply by asking them to do you a small favor. Very cool. Very useful. Or at least Benjamin Franklin thought so. If you and a coworker are slacking off just talking to each other and your supervisor comes up and starts saying what the hell are you doing? Or blaming your group for something, just look at one of your coworkers and don't make eye contact with your boss. Your coworker will likely be looking at your boss, and when your boss sees you looking at the coworker, the anger will be directed at them and not you. It works almost every time. A guy I worked with used to be the laziest and always started screwing around but never got in trouble. He told me his secret and I have used it successfully ever since. When you find yourself in a situation where you're forced to do a job you don't care about, instead of thinking of the job as something you're doing while you wait for your one true passion, just forget about what it means to you and think instead about doing it well. Making sandwiches to pay the bills? Make really good sandwiches and be friendly. Doing scut work for your coworkers since you're the lowest on the totem pole? Do really good scut work. Sweeping floors? Make your floors the cleanest. If you get your ego out of the way, you'll realize that there's a lot of joy to be found in doing anything well, with passion, integrity, and care for the people who you're serving. And the people around you will recognize you as a passionate, serious, caring person, even if what you're doing isn't what you're truly passionate about. Perhaps more importantly, it will create the habit of excellence. You don't develop that habit by slacking your whole life and then suddenly being awesome once you reach an imaginary plateau. This sounds a bit silly, but if you're asking for a favor, always use the word because. I remember reading about a study done at a university where they used every imaginable combination of words to ask if they could cut in line for the photocopier. And they found that using the word because short-circuited people's brains into believing that there's a reason for it. Even if they said something stupid like, could I please cut in line? Because I need to make some copies. This sounds interesting, and I want to try it. Can you please give me an example of when this worked for you? Because concrete examples always help reinforce ideas with me. Plan something every Wednesday that you can look forward to. Everyone looks forward to the weekend, but that always seems like a long ways away when you are getting up Monday. If you plan something smaller to do, like treating yourself to some frozen yogurt or setting up a movie date, you'll look forward to that in the beginning of the week. Then by the time it's over, half the week has gone by and you are that much closer to the weekend. Always give your kid a choice that makes them think they are in control. For instance, when I want him to put his shoes on, I will say, do you want to put your Star Wars shoes on or your shark shoes on? Double quote. This is one of the most effective things that too many parents don't do. Do you want to put on your shoes? Guarantees a fight. Master Logician's way is much better. Or when you are leaving a place. Not are you ready to go? But rather, since we are leaving now, do you want to say goodbye to the host before or after you put on your coat? This makes all three actions, leaving, coat, goodbye, taken for granted. And as soon as the kid picks, they have agreed to doing all three, which you can bring up if they balk. You wanted to say goodbye and then put on your coat because we are leaving. Remember?